It's 1967, the peak of the Chinese, and two factions of communist revolutionaries are in a standoff. The older revolutionaries look with fear on the younger revolutionaries. The younger group is like a pack of wolves on hot coals, crazier than crazy. Besides, while the older fighters only have guns, the young fighters have explosives, which could be detonated at any time. A beautiful teenage girl stands on top of a building and waves a flag. Moments later, she is shot and killed. Yet the girl dies happily, believing that she is passionately sacrificing herself for an ideal. Around the same time, young revolutionary students at Ch1-2 University are rebelling against their teachers, whom they label as bourgeois reactionary academic authorities. Many of the professors have either killed themselves or abandoned their beliefs when faced with this mass humiliation and torture. But a brilliant physics professor refuses to bend to the demands of the Cultural Revolution. To get him to change his mind, his former students are forcing him into a struggle session in which he is physically tormented while the entire student body watches. A group of 2 college-aged men and 4 accosts with accusations. When he remains silent, the girls bring the Ch1-2's wife on stage. The show is turned against her husband. She berates him for teaching his theory of relativity, because it is anti-dialectical and therefore against communism. While Xiao humiliates him, that reflects on the fact that his wife has always been too smart to work as a theorist. Specifically, she has always been too attuned to the political implications of scientific thought. For example, in the years leading up to she began changing the names of theorems to fit the accepted political narrative. In reality, though, as father met in person, a meeting he considered the definitive moment of his life. Rather than discussing physics, the 2 men talked about the starving child they encountered on their path. Later, Xiao's father would muse that in China, any idea that dared to take flight would only crash back to the ground. The gravity of reality is too strong. The students at Ch1-2 begin to beat with a copper belt. As they do so, and her husband debate whether philosophy or experiment should guide scientific theory, the Ch1-2 believes that truth emerges from experiences, whereas Xiao and the students argue that it should be the correct philosophy of Marxism that guides scientific experiments. They double down on their interrogation of, as they fight over the Big Bang Theory, the Ch1-2 admits that he believes in the possibility of a God. This further inflames the revolutionaries, who believe that religion is antithetical to communism. Pushed into a frenzy, the young girls begin to attack the Ch1-2. Within minutes, the Ch1-2 is dead, begins to cackle as if she has lost her mind, while the rest of the students flee the auditorium. Only one person remains, the Ch1-2's daughter. Left alone, finds that the thoughts she could not voice dissolved into her blood, where they would stay with her for the rest of her life. She tries to go home, but when she does so, she only hears her mother's insane laughter. Instead, she goes to the house where her former advisor lives. Like the Ch1-2, Ruin has been tortured for her beliefs. The revolutionaries have tormented her for wearing heels and smeared lipstick across her face. When the Wenji arrives at Ruan's house, she sees that Ruin has taken her own life. She also sees that Ruin chose to wear lipstick and heels when she died. 2 years later, is working in the Greater Khingan Mountains, an isolated forest in Inner Mongolia. The Wenji is helping cut down trees to make grain fields as part of the government's production and construction corps. As she sees the trees fall, she is haunted by memories of her father's death. The scale of the deforestation makes the events of the field small and unimportant. It reflects that this massive environmental destruction is a kind of madness. Is stopped in her thoughts by a reporter for the Corps' newspaper. Len points to the rings on the trees, asking the workers to think about how much history they have just cut down. Most of the other workers do not care, but Bai recognizes a kindred spirit in the Wenji. They share a sadness that this once fertile region has become a barren desert. I tells Wenji about an American book known as The Book, is considered reactionary, but certain government officials have been allowed to read it. Bai explains that it has inspired him to write to the government in protest of its environmental destruction. He then lends the book to the Wenji, warning her to be careful with it. As reads the book, which is about the damaging effects of pesticide use, she begins to believe that human beings are fundamentally evil. Eventually, she decides that humanity can never have a moral awakening of its own accord. Instead, it must depend on some outside force to wake up to its own evil. After finishing the book, returns it to his home near Radar Peak, Though Radar Peak is ostensibly a military base, it is actually much more mysterious. There is a giant antenna on the top of the mountain, and when the antenna is extended, animals panic and humans fall ill. Sometimes even the weather itself changes. Radar Peak is also heavily guarded, and the people in charge have great power within the communist government. Shows the letter he plans to write to the Chinese leaders in Beijing. He thinks the letter is beautiful, so when she notices how much Bai's hands are shaking, she agrees to copy it down for him. While she writes, Bai wonders how someone as highly educated as the Hu, trained as an astrophysicist, can just throw away her skills in a place like the Greater Khingan Mountains. It feels a moment of comfort with Bai, and it is the first time she has felt comfort since her father was killed. But then, she leaves his house and is confronted again by the steel glint of the antenna on Radar Peak. 3 weeks later, is called in to meet with, who runs the Division Political Department of Inner Mongolia. Zheng shows Yu's letter to the government, and he accuses the of writing it herself. He then explains that since this letter is considered to go against the principles of the will be severely punished. That tries to clarify the situation, but she quickly realizes by his framed her hand that she is helpless to defend herself, though had not initially intended to frame. His actions will have tremendous import. Historians would often write about the impact of this 1969 exchange. Still, Bai lived the rest of his life in relative normalcy, eventually moving to Canada and dying of lung cancer. He never acknowledged or apologized for what he had done to thee, is transported to a women's prison. In part because by birth and family background, she is already considered politically suspect. In the jail, the is interviewed by a beautiful, seemingly kind young woman named Chang, believes that the is merely confused because she has read too many books. Chang then presents with a document to sign, but the not yet trusting Chang's kindness insists on reading the document first. The document is all about S father, and worse still, the source for the report is Ye's younger sister. Wenzu is a deeply passionate Red Guard to the point that she has even incriminated her own father. As the reads on, she realizes that the report is about her father's involvement in the mysterious double bomb project of 1964. If the signs the document, it will be used to torture or even execute her father's former colleagues. With this in mind, the refuses to sign. Explains that if signs the document, she will be let off the hook for supposedly writing us letter. However, if the does not sign, she will be prosecuted as an active counter-revolutionary and will face cruel punishment. Still, you will not sign. Frustrated, Cheng grabs a bucket of cold water and pours it all over thee. In the cold air of the inner Mongolian winter, it begins to get so chilly that she starts to hallucinate. First, sees her sister, waving a flag on top of a building. That recalls that Wenzu was killed 2 years ago in a conflict between Red Guard factions. The then pictures, and her mother waving the flag, and then she blacks out.